Welcome to the Coming Clean podcast with your host, 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗘𝗧.
Hit it dash in my position, you will never last. Real talk, I had to get it from the mall. Real talk, now I'm vibing with a bankroll. Cash.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Coming Clean podcast. This is your host, 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗘𝗧. Thank you and welcome again to a new episode. But I want to remind you to do me a favor to go to the website and please subscribe for my upcoming book, From Lies to Riches, which is going to be released before the end of the year. And if you subscribe, apply, we will send you the first chapter completely free and no cost. We're going to get right into the show. And this is an incredible gentleman. I've been really excited about an opportunity to interview him. Young entrepreneur, very passionate, very energetic, very enthusiastic about everything that he does. And I'm excited to have Justin Guarini here with us today. Justin, how are you? And welcome to Coming Clean Podcast.
Look, thank you very much. It's so very nice to be here. Thank you for having me on the show. When everybody asks me how I am, I always say I'm as good as can be expected to be in 2020. There were so many plans that I know so many people had that just were blown up in 2020. But like any good performer, like any good entrepreneur, when you are faced with challenges and things don't go the way you think they're going to go, you pivot and you make the best out of what you got, and that's what I'm doing this year and moving forward.
Justin, you know, we make plans and got laughs at us, huh?
Exactly.
Justin is a singer, an author, a musician, and he is a host, a record producer, and the first runner-up of the first season of American Idol.
Yes.
Along the side of Kelly Clarkson.
My goodness, yes.
Wow, that's been a few years, huh, Justin?
Yeah, just a few. You know, it was just about maybe a week or two ago. It was the 18th anniversary of the finale.
You froze on me.
Did we freeze?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
You talked about 18 years at the finale. Go ahead, start that sentence. So we'll edit it. No big deal.
Sure. Okay, yeah. No problem. So it's so amazing because look at a few weeks ago, it was 18 years ago that I stood on the stage at the Dolby Theater, what was then called the Dolby Theater, it's now the Kodak Theater, in Los Angeles, and was a part of the finale of a huge show. About 30 to 50 million people watched that night's show, the results show. And when I think about it, 18 years ago, I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 different lifetimes, because not only did I go from there and get to sing all over the country and then tour all over the world singing, but then I got to come back to my original love, which was theater and Broadway, and been in 6 Broadway productions since then, and then moved on to television, where I've hosted everything you can think to imagine, as well as starring for what has been 6 years of a commercial as Lil Sweet in a national commercial campaign for Diet Dr. Pepper. And I just continue to now evolve into mentorship and into really just passing along the wisdom that I've gained, for better or worse, over the past 18 years to the next generation, so that they don't have to fall into some of the traps that I fell into. So it just blows my mind to think in the past 18 years how much I've been blessed to be able to accomplish and learn.
And you know, you've been one of those individuals that has always managed to reinvent yourself. You know, you're doing it right now with Lil Sweet. You know, become the voice of Dr. Pepper. You know, and you guys just recently recorded a new campaign in Mexico City. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, it was the 6th year, and Lil Sweet was originally just a character who was designed to be a one-off commercial for Diet Dr. Pepper. Just interesting campaign that was a little off the beaten path, that kept making it through all the audience, audience surveys or testing, how they test it with an audience. And then go from there and create the thing. And you know what? It just took off, and people enjoyed it so much, and it was such a little quirky thing that it lasted. And so last year was year 6. We went down to Mexico City, and we recorded a actual collaboration for a new flavor, which is the mixing of Dr. Pepper and cream soda. And so Lil Sweet, I like to say, he went up to the big leagues, because diet is certainly a wonderful facet of Dr. Pepper, but people know Dr. Pepper, right? That is the brand, what's called the brand base. And so he got called up to to do regular Dr. Pepper as well as Diet Dr. Pepper, and it was so much fun. Every single year I get to go, and I get to be shrunk down via movie magic to 3 foot 6 inches, and every time I put on the wig, I have to grow out a beard. It really is a wonderful family atmosphere we have on the set. They let me play and make things up, and every single year I say, I cannot believe you guys are paying me to do this. This is the type of stuff that I do in my living room when my kids are grumpy and when they won't eat or whatever, just to entertain my family. And yet I get to make that part of my passion, and it really has been such a blessing for me, for my family as well.
But you're passionate about everything. You were passionate on Wicked, Romeo and Juliet, and American Idiot. Tell us a little bit about Broadway, about your Broadway sting. And
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is back in 2002, for about 4 or 5 years previous, I had been not only going to school for musical theater and for acting and for vocal performance.
that was before American Idol.
Correct. That was just before American Idol. And I'd studied vocal performance as well as musical theater and acting. And so it's always been a passion of mine. I always wanted to be on Broadway. And I had the opportunity to audition for The Lion King around 1999. And so I went through a series of auditions and made it right to the end. And they said, look, we want to work with you. You're a little bit too young right now, but we know that there's a place for you eventually, right? So I got the old eventually tag. And so fast forward a few years on from there, and 2002 comes along, and I had auditioned a little bit here and there for Lion King, but never quite got it. And then this other show comes along called American Idol, which nobody had heard of. I auditioned for it. Long story short, they told me I was going to Hollywood. And so about a week before I go to Hollywood, I get this phone call from the casting director of The Lion King saying, hey, we finally have the role for you. So there I sit at literally a fork in the road. I remember exactly where I was. I pulled over because I picked up the phone, and there's a joke that we have where we go, oh, and when your phone rings, you go, oh, hold on one second, it's Broadway calling. Hello. And the literal Broadway was actually calling me, and I had to tell Broadway, well, there's this show. I can't commit to this musical that I've been wanting to do for most of my life because there's this other show that I have to go out to LA for. And so I said, can I have a week? And they said yes. And long story short, I basically made the decision about a week later to participate in American Idol. And I had to call up Broadway and say, thank you, but no thank you. I'm going to try this other thing because it feels like it's going in the right direction. And my instincts were correct because I spent 10 years after that singing, touring all over the world, and just, living in LA, and it was a whole nother life. But what ended up happening, and the sort of the happy ending of the story, is that 10 years later, I moved back to the East Coast, fell in love, got married, and auditioned for what would become my first Broadway musical. And the opening night party that we had was in Times Square, in the same exact hotel, in the same exact conference room that I had auditioned for American Idol in. So I'd come full circle, and here I was now on Broadway, and it is my favorite medium. I love film, I love television, I love all that stuff, but there's something about being on stage, being live, not being able to say, oh, wait, let me do that again, or cut, or whatever, that is thrilling, that keeps you on the balls of your feet, and makes you have to learn to adjust to whatever is happening, whether that's how the person you're acting with feels that day on the stage and what the energy they bring, what energy the audience brings, and every audience is different. How you feel if something happens on stage that's unplanned, how do you deal with it? It is thrilling. I love it, and it's why I keep going back for more and more.
Not only that, is the only arts where you engage with the audience become part of the performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're the final cast member, right?
Yeah.
And when the audience is attentive and you stay one step ahead of them and you keep them on the edge of their seats, it's thrilling. And that's what it is so challenging now, because we are all so separated because of the pandemic. There's that element of that energy and that connection in the room that is missing, and that we have to find a new way to adjust to.
Justin, you obviously American Idol gave you a larger stage to play on, and it really brought you into the eyes of the world, for lack of a better word. You became a persona, you became an artist, you became known as through that. But you also faced a lot of challenge. You became an instant millionaire and lost it all. Tell us a little bit about that story, and how is it that you've been able to deal with it both mentally and emotionally? How do you make that comeback?
Well, it's really interesting. I grew up in an upper middle class family. And the one thing that I would say that was missing from my general education was money. The understanding and the handling of money. It wasn't something that I had to think about. I mean, I wasn't fabulously wealthy, right? It was something that I had to consider, but it wasn't ever something that I took the time to learn about. And that became a challenge when I was given a ton of money right off the bat, and then on top of that, I was given a lot of money, but then I was not given the appropriate direction in my career, right? And you hear it all the time. There are more highly paid sports athletes who end up being broke, award-winning athletes, award-winning actors, because you think it's going to last forever. That's the trap, right? You get conned into believing that it's just going to keep coming and that you can spend it at whatever rate you want. And my big challenge was I was given a bunch of money, but my career and my self-worth were not in alignment with the money that I was being given, right? I got a bunch of money, and then my career started to tank and my self-worth started to tank. So what did I do? Well, I have to look like I'm successful. I have to do that. And so what do? You spend in order to look like you're successful. You go out and you buy out the bar or whatever, those type of things, right? You buy the cars, you buy the clothes, buy the things, the flash, that are these outward shows of wealth. But on the inside, I was sitting in a compound in Beverly Hills, a beautiful, massive mansion. I had I could get food whenever I wanted it. I literally had a walk-in closet where I would go and I would take off my clothes and put them on the floor and leave them in a pile, and then the very next day they were washed and folded in the drawers. Living in the lap of luxury, had all the cars that I wanted to drive, was famous, had all the money, had all the things that people think that they want. But I was the most miserable I have ever been in my life. And it taught me a very valuable lesson that fame and fortune are not what I want, not what I wanted. It's a lot, people think, if I only had enough money, if I only had enough this, that, and the other. But that lesson I learned from that was that no amount of money, no amount of fame, no amount of stuff is going to fill the void inside of me.
And you and your family were certainly no strangers to Hollywood. I mean, your father dated Gladys Knight. You had interactions with the Jacksons, so you were not a stranger to Hollywood. You knew the lifestyle, but you were not emotionally connected and balanced and synchronized in the other areas that would have helped you recognize the downfalls, right?
Yes.
Now, and the trappings. Now, let me ask you a question, because you talk about it so profoundly and with such a mindfulness. How is it that you reach that level of maturity to understand what happened to you?
You know, again, it's just the living and the doing. And eventually you get to a point of threshold where you say, either I'm going to continue down this path and die. Now, maybe not a physical death, but it might be sort of a spiritual or emotional or that sort of death. Or you say, okay, enough. There must be a change. And you begin to search. You begin to ask different questions, better questions, right? And so I know that I have always been, and I'm fortunate, I was in college and I was plowing and making my way through a course in miracles. I've attended Tony Robbins' Mastery University. You know, it's like just searching, and personal development has always been a key facet in my life, but it wasn't until I got old enough to really understand that no one is going to save me. I must save myself, right? You know, even if you want to put it, it's like, you know, God does things for, God helps those who help themselves, you know, right?
Right, right.
And so it wasn't until I really embraced that and embraced the understanding that, okay, there is no manager, agent, guru, guide, whatever, who's going to do it for me. I must do the work and do the work every single day. And so it wasn't really until I made the decision to become a part of the Tony Robbins Mastery University, which is, you know, attending Unleash the Power Within and then going on from there and being upsold into all the programs that he has. But I traveled all over the world for it and all over the country. And it really set me off on a really great footing. And from there, it was just making the decision to learn as much as I could about myself, develop the areas in my life, whether it was from finances or my skill sets, my mindsets, whatever it was. I just knew that I needed to save myself. And so I went about exercising that muscle as much as I could.
You've always been, I mean, you were certainly one of the most popular guys, most popular artists in American Idol. Everybody was kind of surprised that you were not the winner but it is what it is, right? That's the reality. But also, you know, a lot of people, a lot of artists, primarily, a lot of gifted, talented people get lost. You know, they don't recuperate as you have. You know, there's addiction, there's mental illness, there's suicide, there's a lot of other things that pulled us and really take us into a dark corner or a dark hole. You know, mental health is certainly something that is very prevalent in the world today. And in two ways, we talk about it more. You know, there's quoting yourself, you said imperfection is the new perfect. You know, quoting you. Imperfection and we're able to talk about issues that, you know, alcohol abuse and drug abuse, things that were taboos in Hollywood primarily, you know, in the entertainment industry. You know, you don't connect with the audience, you don't talk to the audience, you want to be seen like this unreachable, touchable people. And you certainly have pivoted that, you know, which included now having your I'm going to call it online university or online courses that you're doing, your masterminds, your tell us a little bit about that and what was it that made you have that pivot?
Well, you know what? I do come from that generation of actor. Like you said, I'm no stranger to Hollywood, whether it was the Jacksons or my dad was dating Gladys Knight or whoever it was that I was around. I was always in it, but not of it. And so I understand politics in a way that most people don't, because I'm the son of a politician and I get to see the machinations of that world, and then entertainment mixed with politics and all these things. So I had all that education, but it wasn't really until I reached a certain level in my career. Now, you had American Idol, which was like, just shot me to the moon on a rocket. But then once I came back to some sort of equilibrium where I was working and I was successful in building my career in especially the musical theater world and the theater world, it wasn't until I had an experience of being so significantly disrespected in an audition and during a 3-month audition process where I stepped back and I was like, wait a minute, I don't ever want to feel this way again. And then I went a step further and I said, well, look, if I feel this way after all I've done, I mean, and I'm not, top of the charts by any stretch, but I ain't at the bottom either. I'm somewhere in the middle. I said, if they're going to treat me like this, what do they treat the majority of the people who don't even have the kind of recognition that I have? What? And so I said, how can I not feel the self-worthlessness, and how can I not feel like I am just another number, and how can I not beat myself up? And then how can I help other people to not feel that way? How can I help my community to, in essence, rise together to a place where, especially as performers, where we understand that we have power, we have influence, because we've been taught, educated, and trained that we do not have that. That the people who are the producers, the directors, the tastemakers, they have all of that. Now, yes, it's true, they do have that. But if we recognize our own self-worth, if we recognize our own power, if we recognize our own influence, then when we walk into an audition or into a virtual audition like it is now, there's a whole different energy walking in the door that says, I am equal to you. We are two artists, or two sets of artists, who are looking to collaborate together. Do you want to work with me? Here's what I got. You like it? Great. You don't like it? Great. No problem. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and eventually it'll click. And so when I really began to understand that for myself, I wanted to evangelize it as much as possible and go out and teach other people who are younger, who really grow up and have grown up under the system of being less than, to recognize their own power and their own influence. So, and I have the book right here, I created Audition Secrets, which is basically a little bit about my story, but in it is, it's a quick read. It's 5 super simple but super powerful mindsets that you can walk into, or techniques even, that you can walk into an audition room or onto an audition Zoom like this, and really understand and project that power, project that influence in the room. And half the battle is mindset in my business, in the performance business. Right? You have skill sets, singing, acting, dancing, whatever else, juggling, whatever else it is. But why is it that someone who might be a little bit less talented, quote unquote, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've been like, how did they get that job and I didn't get that job, right? All those things that we say as performers, right? It might be a little bit petty, but hey, it's true. It's
and that's in business as well. That's in entrepreneurship. That's in every area. That's in a career, Why did Bob get promoted and he's the laziest guy in the room, right?
Yes, right. But there is something to be said for the mindset that Bob has and the Bobs in our life have that may be the deciding factor. It's a way that they present themselves and carry themselves that pushes them over the finish line before everyone else. And so that was the aim for the first part. And then that was Audition Secrets, just about auditioning. But then as the brand has evolved, as my message has evolved, I recognized that, oh my goodness, I really need to, because I've done the research on the pain points and what people really need. And so many people come to me and say, you know what, I just don't feel confident. I just don't feel like I XYZ. And so I said, okay, well, what's the story behind that? And what I love to tell my students is that our number one job as performers is to serve the story. And the person or performer that serves the story the best usually wins the role, or wins, right? But our number one job as people is to create stories that serve us. And that's it. At the end of the day, our beliefs, our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors are all rooted in a story, in our personal story about whatever that thing is. And so part of what I'm doing now is really digging behind the scenes, getting to the thoughts behind the thoughts and examining the stories that we have created in our minds based on the experiences that we have, that we then project out into the world. And if you don't like your story, change it. You are the author of your own story, right? You can always edit your own story.
Absolutely. And rewrite the chapter.
Exactly.
Rewrite the chapter any time you want.
Absolutely.
or simply start a new book. I don't want to get off too far. I want you to talk to us a little bit about those 5 secrets. Just give us a little blurt of what they are.
Sure.
Don't go into detail, but tell us a little bit of what they are.
No, absolutely. So one of the secrets that I have here, and it's the first chapter right there, it's own every mistake. Own it. When we walk into an audition room, we will often make some sort of mistake. It could be small, it could be large, but I will guarantee you that especially when it comes to live theater, every single show you watch has a mistake in it, multiple mistakes in it. Sometimes they are train wreck worthy mistakes, but the audience never knows. The show keeps
Goes on.
That's right. The show must go on. And it's because those actors, those performers understand that sometimes you just got to own it. I make a mistake, I don't show it, I own it, and I work around it. And so I go into how you can own every single mistake and some of the examples of the gigantic mistakes. Yeah, and sometimes, really at the end of the day, sometimes the mistakes that happen, especially when it comes to live theater, are so thrilling, and they actually make the show, right? There was one story I tell about an actor in Shakespeare, who completely went up in a play that I was in, Romeo and Juliet, you mentioned it before. He completely forgot his lines, and Shakespeare is not something that you can like improv around, right? It's either right or it's wrong, right? And so it's not even in the English that we use these days. And so through a series of events, he eventually just turned to the audience and went, "Yikes!" And everybody clapped. Oh, it was it's all that anybody talked about, right? But it was just so real and so thrilling. The next step that I talk about is don't ever lie. So many people walk into interviews, they walk into auditions, they walk into places where they have to present themselves, and they unconsciously and unknowingly lie. And when you put that lie out into the universe, out into the energy of the room, people feel it. They might not know, or they might just store it in the back of their heads and say, oh, that's normal. But there's something to be said about owning where you are and who you are, and that authenticity, because it ends up being so rare in those instances, actually sets you apart from everyone else who's coming in trying to get the same job that you have. The next secret is active.
I'm going to ask you to pause right there for a second, because you said something that is key here, and it is only now being talked about more fluently, and that is energy. Okay? The energy that we transmit anytime we make a connection with somebody. And people can go into rooms and automatically, if that person or persons bring in their own energy, people say, well, there's something about him, or there's something about her. I don't like him and I don't trust him. And there may be nothing wrong with that individual. He may be a completely honorable, respectful individual, but for some reason he got connected, or she got connected to this negative energy that they brought with them into the room. And now it has contaminated the atmosphere. And people don't understand that it's very simple to break that. I wanted to elaborate on that because a lot of people still don't talk about the importance of that.
No, a lot of people don't make the investment, and it is an investment, to understand energy. And I mean, there are people who think that that's woo-woo and all that, and in some circles it can be promoted as that, but if we look at it from a scientific, a ones and zeros sort of perspective, right now, in this room that I am in, there is an untold number of radio waves that are passing through the walls, passing through my body, and the only reason why I don't hear the top 40 stations is because I literally have no way with my body to attune to that frequency, right? So you can't argue with that. It's happening. Well, The same thing happens with our thoughts. We put out an energy, whether it's BTUs from the heat on our body, or just our thoughts, or whatever it is, or our heart rate, or whatever. I mean, that's what, the Apple Watch and all that stuff, that's what this thing is, right? It monitors that. It's real. And so when you make the investment in understanding that energy and delving into your own story, your own energy, and saying what's going on with me, and can I clean or correct or whatever that is, then you begin to understand why it is you, like you said, feel that weird thing about that person, or why you feel like, I don't know what it is about this person, but I just want to be around them all the time. And so yeah, energy, whether it's from a spiritual perspective or a scientific perspective, is real, and it's becoming more commonplace, and we just need to keep going and understanding it as much as we can, because it really does make the difference and helps us to not only connect to ourselves, but to connect to or avoid connecting to other people.
Absolutely. So we have admit your mistakes, don't lie, and then next.
Yeah, so we have own every mistake, because sometimes you don't have to admit it, you just have to own it.
Own it. Right.
Yeah,
Own it. Yeah.
own every mistake, don't ever lie. The next one is be an active listener. Be an active listener, right? There's something where I talk to my kids all the time. They can look at me and they might be hearing what I'm saying, but they're not actually listening to what I'm saying. And my wife and I will be like, we just told you. But they're not actively listening. And there's something that, especially in acting and performance, when you are an active listener, you are so in the moment. And there's something to be said for being truthful in the moment in acting that really elicits beautiful responses. Some genius things will happen when you are solely in the moment. I'm not thinking about my line or what I'm supposed to say or what I have for lunch coming or what. I'm in the moment, and I'm with the energy and the words and the intention of the person.
You become present. You become present. You're in the room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, 100%. And so there's actually an exercise that I have that's very simple and very easy that helps you to really focus on being an active listener and be in the moment. And then the fourth one is very specific to acting, which is the casting team is on your side. And a lot of people walk in and they're just like, it's like this. They're like, hi, I'm Justin, and I'm here for, and the essence of that is just, please give me a job. Please, 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 please. And I'll see actors walk out and be like, man, that guy hated me. That casting director hated me. And I always laugh because I'm like, no, they really are desperate for you to be the one. Because when you walk into the casting room, the audition room, and you're the one, guess what? That means their job is done. They get to go home and they get to move on to their next thing. And the director, the producer who's pressuring them gets off the bat. So walking into an audition room, very specific to performers, and recognizing that the people who make the decision on whether or not you get the job are on your side and are desperate for you to be the one is a different energy than walking in thinking you have to beg these pharaohs upon high for a job. And then the last secret that I have, as simple as it sounds, it is probably one of my favorites and the most profound, is just this. This is supposed to be fun. Right? We grow up and we put on costumes and we pretend to be this or that, a pirate or a police officer or whatever. You know, we're just playing.
A mask.
Yeah, and then we grow up and we say, oh, I gotta pay my bills, and I gotta get this right, and I hope this casting director likes me. And well, what if I don't? I have studied Stanislavski, but what if I didn't study, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 or whatever? We get caught in our heads about our skill sets and our worth and our, value to our self-worth, but our value to and all this stuff, and we forget that this is play. We as performers get paid to dress up and play pretend. And this is supposed to be fun. And when you walk into a room, recognizing that if you don't get this job, it doesn't mean that you're worthless. If you do get this job, it doesn't mean that you're the greatest thing since sliced time. Whether I'm in a dramatic or a comedic scene, this is supposed to be fun. Remember, it's like I tell my students, stop acting and start playing. Because you're going to discover a whole new world that you forgot about before that you forgot about, and that you just have covered under all of the money and the self-worth and the this person and comparisons and all those traps that we fall into. And so that's it. Own every single mistake. Don't ever lie. Be an active listener. The casting team is on your side, and this is supposed to be fun. Are really the core, and I tell stories about all of that, and where it's necessary, actually provide exercises where people can really learn how to uncover their sort of genius and their sort of that play and that the heart inside of what it is that we do as performers that we often cover over with just junk.
And the reality is that as human beings, we're all performers. So it seems to me like these 5 secrets would apply even to our daily lives, right?
For sure.
I mean, how do we behave? How do we show up every day to be accepted, to be part of, to become inclusive? And when we become inclusive, we include others. So automatically there's that positive energy that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Justin, you're a humanitarian and a big advocate for musical education, or for music arts. Tell us a little bit about that in your efforts, and what is it that you're actually doing in that forefront?
You know, a few years back, I went to Congress and I lobbied our Congress people about music education, because there was a trend, and it's still continuing, unfortunately, to this day, where a lot of arts programs are being cut. Art programs, even physical education, gym programs are being cut from schools. And it's just like, oh my goodness, it is such an injustice and a disservice, especially to our young people in underserved areas, because music itself and art is the fabric and the backbone of any culture throughout time that has survived, right? I mean, and to think that in our country that we would cut that out. I know we're a relatively young country compared to many around the world, but arts and physical education, but especially arts and artistry, is a way for us to express ourselves that is not ones and zeros, that involves getting up, that involves being active. And even if you want to take music on just the basic levels of math, you know, counting to 4 and learning different rhythms, and you want to take it from a language arts or an English perspective, then, you know, you learn different languages, whether it be Latin or, you know, I've sung obviously in Italian or Spanish, or you learn languages, and then you want to take it even from just a social and cultural perspective. When you sing in a choir in school, you literally have to blend and to work with the people on your left and your right and your front and in back of you, and to understand how differences, sometimes often, you know, disparate ideas can come together and work as a unit and as a whole. So there's so many things beyond just singing on a set of risers that choir and arts and dance and acting give us as a culture. And so that's why I'm extremely passionate about making sure that that is something that continues to be in our schools. And as a matter of fact, next week I'm doing a master class for my local high school, my alma mater, for the actors. And just, yeah, I mean, I love, because if there's anything I can do to help the next generation of actor or singer, performer, or dancer avoid the pitfalls that I went through, and to maybe help them, you know, mindsets and skill sets that we don't get taught in school, help them to understand those, then I'll do it for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about you talked earlier between the directors or the gatekeepers in Hollywood, the powers that be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that used to be known as the golden rule, right? The ones with the gold make the rules, right? So it was like the actor was the peasant and the director was a kingmaker, right? So you had to go before the peasant and he would have to bless you and make you a king, right? And now, now those, you know, with social media, with somebody being empowered by their presence, by a lot of the personal development tools that we are being given by gurus like Tony Robbins and David Meltzer and Dean Graziosi and all those John Maxwell's and John Tracy and all those great personal development mentors that has taken us into a new culture of beliefs that are developing a new culture of being and becoming, right? So that has kind of shifted the power, because now Justin, with X number of followers, X number of presence, can have better bargaining chips, okay, to go to a table, right? In fact, you can create your own movie with your phone and very low budgets, right? And take it on Netflix. So there's definitely a shift there. But there's also a shift where the big dollars are not being paid to the artists as well, because, you know, Hollywood as we know it is beginning to disappear or fade away or shifting or pivoting or whatever. So where do you see the opportunity there today for a young artist, for a young up and coming influencer?
Sure. Well, I see social media as a double-edged sword, right? Again, like you said, you have access to the world, whether it's through TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, and you have the ability to get your message out. The flip side of that is, so does everybody else. So how do you cut through the noise? And that involves understanding of business and understanding of marketing. So part of the things that I will teach younger artists or younger influencers in the performance space is not just the skill sets, not just the mindsets of auditioning and acting and performing and singing and dancing, but do you understand the business of show? Do you understand the power structure? Do you understand how the money flows? Do you understand how to cut above the noise? Do you understand what branding is? Do you understand what marketing and all those things are vital components for people to know now, whether you want to do something locally, regionally, nationally, or internationally. If you do not understand the basics of marketing, the basics of sales, the basics of fulfillment, the basics of all those things, then you are going to have a challenging road, or you're going to be shooting in the dark, as it were, and hoping to hit something. And maybe you will, maybe you won't. So that being said, social media is great, but I think where we initially fall, the biggest trap that people fall into when it comes to social media is vanity metrics. The vanity metrics of likes, the vanity metrics of followers. Guess what? Your likes and your followers don't matter.
Zero.
Engagement is the key. I could have 2,000 followers, and if my 2,000 followers are engaged, the algorithms in social media will show them more of my stuff. Therefore, I will be able to promote whatever it is I want to promote to them. There are people who have 2 million followers who have 0.01, 1% of engagement. Nobody's seeing their stuff. Now, like 1 million followers, point away. What I don't know, whatever that is. Maybe it was 100,000 or 10,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Still. But that being said, only 10,000 people are actually even seeing it, and probably even a smaller number of them, you know, the impressions, even smaller number of them, maybe only 1,000, are actually engaging with the post or engaging with the post. So that's all a lie. Right? We think, oh, I don't have as many followers as XYZ, and I'm then. That's all of that is vanity. Really, it's all about engagement. So how do you create more engaging content? And so, you know, we do have power and influence, again, as I take it back to what I was talking about before. That is a key. We have more power and more influence as performers, as young influencers, than we are led to believe. But there are very specific criteria and steps that we must invest in. Marketing, business, the understanding of power and how it flows now, that are key to having the kind of success that you see people having. And it doesn't happen overnight. You must build and build brick by boring brick, and a year later people will be like, oh, this person came out of nowhere and I can't can't believe it. And you'll start to get the 1,000 followers a day and all that other stuff. But it is that initial investment and the foundation of understanding that most people either skimp on or don't do at all. And then they wonder why their brand or their business or whatever falls like a house of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into the uncomfortable conversations, okay? The things that are plaguing our country today, because as part of our community, as part of our collective, and as part of our responsibility as influencers and people that have chosen to be present and active in social media and wanting to make an impact and making a difference. There's a lot of talk about our upcoming election, and there's a lot of talk about whether Corona or C-19, whatever you want to call it, has been a man-made creation that will disappear after the election. What is your stance and your opinion on it? And I understand I don't want to get into a political debate. I know that background is in politics, but I just want to hear your view, and I want the audience to hear a different perspective, a humane perspective, not polluted by the media.
Sure. I mean, I believe that the coronavirus is real. I would trust science before anything. And according to science, it is real. It really affects people. There have been people who have passed away from it. Yes, people with complications, but I err with my family and my loved ones. I err on the side of caution. I am a believer in masks. I am a believer in science. I'm a believer in sense. And that's the long and short of it, really. My children are going to online school. I am waiting, just like everyone else, for a vaccine. And I just know I'm a lover of history. And if we look at our history and we look at things like Spanish flu and polio, this is not the first time this has happened in this country and in the world. We survived it. We will survive this. This is not the first. When we look at the history of our country and whatever side of the political spectrum you fall on, our country is a baby in terms of age compared to many of the countries around the world, right? Especially when you talk about your European countries, which have us by quite a lot, or China, which has us by what feels like eons. So we are still learning. We are still finding our way. And I think every president who has come along will tell you that our Constitution is imperfect. Our democracy is imperfect, and we're finding our way through it. And whatever happens with this election, I do believe that there's going to be significant civil unrest, and we're going to either learn from it or we're not at the end of the day. And so I just know that I am focused on just making sure that I serve my community. I'm focused on making sure that I keep up with the latest science. And that's what I believe. I don't think anybody should believe anything that they do or they don't want to believe. But there is a larger conversation that I think we could have in terms of how does my life affect your life, affect their life, affect their life, affect all of our lives. And I'll end with this. There have been so many different opinions. There have been so many different thoughts. And the question I have, maybe the better question to ask ourselves, is how can we disagree peacefully?
Absolutely.
You have to believe what you believe. Doesn't make me any better than you, doesn't make you any better than me. We just don't agree on it. Okay, but what do we agree on? We agree on our families. We want them to be safe. We agree on the fact that we want our country to excel, and there's so much that we do agree on but it's been masked and been marred by the political conversation, by the polarization of so much of what it is that we consume, that we sometimes just can't see what we agree on. And so that's what I would love to find out and ask more people. Hey, what is it that we do agree on?
And I agree with you on that. That's an area that we need to focus more on. And you know, the reality is that you said something a minute ago, and that is we are a young country, and what we are experiencing it's not new. You cited the Spanish flu, you cited polio, and there's many other atrocities that had plagued our country, many other countries, and they too have survived those. What has happened is that we have access to so much information, and immediately, and everybody becomes a reporter. You know, everybody reposts this and posts this and reposts this and reposts this, and we light up a match, we fuel, we gasoline what's really going on. But this is not anything different than what has happened in history before. It's just being amplified. Now let's talk about Black Lives Matter. What is your stance, and how do you see that there can be a unison, there can be a meeting of the minds there to change, but make true progressive change, not just sugarcoat it, not just pacify, okay, but really make progressive change?
Well, I am a living example of what happens when people of two different races come together.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that.
I am a living example of what I mean, my father is African American, my mother is Italian, English, Irish, and they fell in love in the 70s in the South, which is its own improbability. If you know anything about the history of the South. And
absolutely.
I was a product of their union and their love. And so where do I stand? Well, I believe that Black Lives Matter, of course. And, you know, there are a lot of people who say, well, but no, all lives matter. And yes, of course, that's true, but all lives are not under constant threat. All lives have not suffered 400 plus years of
abuse, depression.
Exactly.
Oppression.
Yes, oppression, right?
Yeah.
And so I am a living example of the conversation that happens when we get together. And so that being said, it goes back to that question of what can we agree on, regardless of our political affiliation, regardless of our race, regardless of our creed or religious beliefs or lack thereof. There are basic human tenets that we can agree on. And were this to be happening, were the script flipped, as it were, how would you feel about it? You know, and so it's okay. I mean, I believe that now is the time for us to speak up and for us to address these changes. Now, of course, violence and
rioting and looting, yeah,
that obviously there's no place for that in any scenario. But it's just interesting how 2020 came along and said, you know, 2020 is the year of vision, right? Because coronavirus came along, and one of the effects was we had to stop looking outward and going outward and doing all this stuff out here, and we had to sit at home and be with ourselves. We had to sit and look at our situation in its most basic, pure form, internally.
Who am I? Who am I?
Who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I without the gym? Who am I without acting classes? Who am I without the office? Who am I without sports? Who am I?
Naked.
Yeah. Yes, we became connected, or we saw how disconnected we really are. Yeah. And that being said, you know, when it comes to bringing it back around, there has been a disconnection in the area of race. There's been a disconnection in the area of politics, obviously. Those things were heightened by this year. And so, you know, originally the Black Lives Matter was not organized and fell victim to its own message and its own people. But now it seems to have come into sharper focus and is a conversation that is worth having, that I think more people are willing to listen to, just like the Me Too movement, just like all of these movements that are happening. And there's a reason why they're happening right And there's a reason why we can, there's an opportunity, I should say, that we have with this year of introspection, with the great pause, to be able to say what really matters to me, and what can we agree on, and how can we make change that lasts. We've been talking about it for decades. We've done a little bit here. We've taken 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards, but now we can't move forward or backward. We are stuck in a place where we must deal with what's happening now, internally, externally. So, and I hope that we can actually move forward with real change that serves everyone.
Absolutely. We were forced to a moment of silence, therefore we were forced to listen. And that's what we're not used to.
Yeah.
Justin, tell us about your current projects. You're working with Paula Abdul in a particular project. I know I've seen you on social media with her.
Oh, no.
Is that something that we're not talking about, or no?
No. That was actually something what you're referring to was I was on the Kelly Clarkson show, and it was Paula, Simon, and Randy, and I just took a picture with Paula because we were all on the show together. And
I love her. She's one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So tell us about your current projects and where does Justin go from here?
Sure. Well, Justin is still performing, still actively doing his thing, and as a matter of fact, I'm actually flying out, which will be the first flight I've taken this year, which scares me, but I've got one of these. And so I am performing. I am both here on the internet and with very rare exception, live and safely. And I am working on my new brand, which is Artist Mindset Mastery. And that is just the umbrella brand for the one-on-one coaching that I do, the master classes that I do, the book that I have, Audition Secrets, as well as a 7-day intensive Artist Mindset Mastery program online. And then I have a 90-day online audition academy that I teach, and it's just awesome. I'm so excited to put it out there. We'll be launching in the next few weeks as of this recording, and I am in performance mode. Sure, as a matter of fact, later on today I have an audition that I have to do here in the virtual space, but I really have fallen in love with mentorship. I've fallen head over heels with watching the light bulb go off over a student's head when they get a principle, or they recognize something in themselves that they didn't see before, that then propels them forward a little bit closer to their goals. And so you want to talk about that passion that I bring. That is what lights me up. And I recognize that, like, I used to say, oh, those who can't do teach, but I just recognize those who can teach must. Because we need it, right? We need it. I need it just as much as my students need it. And I learn as much about myself and about the world as hopefully my students do when I mentor them.
I love that. Those who can teach must. I absolutely love that. Where can people find you?
Very simple. You just go any of the social medias /Justin Guarini. If you can't spell that, just look up the guy from American Idol with the hair online. And then, of course, justinguarini.com or ilivetoperform.com.
The incredible Justin Guarini on Coming Clean Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today on another episode of the Coming Clean Podcast. Make sure to join Peter and his next guest on a brand new episode as we continue changing and impacting lives across the world. Share this episode with a friend, follow, subscribe, and leave a review.
Boy, I had to get it fast. Get a dash in my position.